Good morning and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar on mobile reporting. My name is Adam Horn. I'm one of the BI consultants here at BICP. And today we have really a lot of good content, really kind of targeted to our two main audiences. For those of you who are looking to find out some more information about mobile reporting and seeing if it's a good fit for your company, I really do think we have some good information or some content around kind of the foundation of mobile reporting to get you guys up and running. And then for those of you who have already implemented mobile reporting and have maybe either hit a major roadblock and are looking for some maybe best practices to follow to kind of rectify some of the issues that you're up against, or if you have just successfully implemented mobile reporting and you're just kind of browsing the market to see what else is out there, I really do think we have some good information today, so I'm excited to have you guys on the call. As I mentioned, my name is Adam Horn. I'm one of the consultants here at BICP. My primary area of focus is on the business objects front-end reporting tool suite, but I've really kind of have played a lot of roles within business objects. The first one being in the report development space, but also kind of more towards the administrative side as well. In addition to business objects, I've also kind of played a role of a business SME for the OTC workstream. So I've been through a handful of go-lives on SAP Global Implementation Project. And for one of the go-lives, I went through the motions of conducting workshops, gathering requirements, and then finally actually defining the strategy of how the reporting would work within OTC and some of the other work streams as well. So like I said, I do have that SAP Global Implementation experience, so I do know how fun and exciting it can be and how fast-paced it can be, but also at the same time I know some of the frustration points that companies go through when they look to roll out SAP or business objects from scratch. And in addition to that, I've also spent a lot of time really in a project management role, managing either small projects or really large-scale projects. Now I've worked in two different sectors. The first one being the biotech area, and now I found myself over in the apparel and footwear solutions space. So enough about me. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So before we actually get into the presentation, I do have some protocols I want to go over with you guys today. If you guys haven't already noticed, I have muted you guys' lines just so that we don't have any background noise disturb anybody as we kind of conduct the webinar. But please, if you have questions, I really do encourage you guys not to wait to the very end to raise your question. If anything kind of stems from the content that I'm presenting, please do send your questions over via the chat window to @moderator. And if time permits, and I believe it will, we'll be able to answer those questions at the very end of the call. Now, if anybody has any questions that may arise after the presentation about any of the content that we've discussed today, or have any general questions about BICP as a company, feel free to go ahead and contact John Passek, who was the partner who introduced the company in the beginning of the webinar. We have his email address on the slide. And also you guys will be sent a link to this PowerPoint presentation, so you have it there. And for maybe some colleagues of yours who couldn't join today, or if you wanted to go back and revisit a particular segment of this presentation, we are recording it, so you will be able to find a link not only on our company's website, but we will be emailing you directly with a link. Okay, so now we have the introductions and the webinar protocol out of the way. Let's kind of talk about how the rest of the webinar is going to play out. Like I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, the first portion of this webinar is really going to be kind of introducing mobile reporting, just what is mobile reporting as a concept, and then we're going to be talking about the mobile client itself, which is the application. And then we'll go in and talk about some of the client properties that we can customize or tweak to meet our business needs. After we get through that portion of the webinar, we'll kind of switch gears and we'll go into the tips and tricks and best practices portion, where I'll actually share some firsthand or some of my experiences from firsthand industry. I'm sorry, I'm kind of going over my words there. We'll then enter into the tips and tricks and best practices portion of the webinar, where I'll be sharing what I've learned through my experience within mobile reporting, primarily focusing on Webi report development on the iPad, and then talking about kind of holistically what are some of the best practices when a company goes to implement mobile reporting for the first time, or what they should follow if they've already implemented it, and like I said, are kind of struggling down the line. And then at the very end, we'll open it up for a Q&A session, like I said, if time permits, which I'm hoping it will. So, intro to mobile reporting. What is mobile reporting when you hear it out maybe and you see it maybe on the internet, if you hear it within your colleagues? When I say mobile reporting, and I'm not sure when other people say mobile reporting, we're really talking about the capability to be on a mobile device, refresh a report, and reach back directly to your company's database and bring back live data. By having this feature enabled, or this capability out to your end users, you're really kind of empowering them with great organizational insight while they're, I like to coin it, on the go or when they're on the road, so they still can make informative decisions or be equipped to make those informative decisions when they're not in the office. Now to kind of elaborate or give you guys one example of how this really could benefit an organization, I'm going to take an actual scenario that I actually have worked through. And like I said, I have some experience in the OTC work stream, and I would heavily work with the field sales organizations throughout my projects. And what really came up the most was that in working directly with the sales reps, that they had a lot of customer site visits, whether it was once a week, bi-weekly, monthly, what have you not. And going into those site visits, they were expected to have kind of real-time conversations with their customers, and really what I like to coin as a 360-degree view of their customer. So they would want to know kind of what orders are on back order, which of their orders are still open, what is shipped or what's in transit, what is just recently invoiced, and maybe more importantly, what is their order history, so you can kind of analyze what they've purchased in the past or the purchasing patterns, and maybe trying to make that next big sale. So prior to mobile reporting, or if you haven't implemented mobile reporting yet, this information was really gathered, and this is what I've personally seen, by scrolling through large PDF files, and maybe these files have 20 pages to them. And really, these are static PDFs. There's no filtering involved or available. They're just a PDF file, and you have to go through line by line and find the customer that you're going to talk to for the day, and then actually find the line items that you want to actually talk about or that you find relevant. In addition to this, you'll probably end up having to call customer service multiple times because maybe, and as you guys know, or for the people on the line that actually schedule reports out, you know there's usually a cadence, whether it be weekly or bi-weekly. But in most cases, you'll have to kind of check in with customer service and say, hey, I'm looking at this report. It was bursted out a few days ago. I want to make sure this order is indeed on back order still. In the ever-changing business world that we kind of are living in, as you guys know, things can change really quickly from one day to the next. So having an outdated report really doesn't do the sales rep any good when they want to speak intelligently to their customers. In addition to these two kind of preparation items to go talk to a customer, usually what I've seen what happens is that as much as the sales rep can prepare, they'll still end up having a back-and-forth conversation with the customer and won't be able to really rise to the occasion and be able to answer any questions they have on the fly to really keep things moving. With the implementation of mobile reporting, sales reps can really rise to that occasion and have those real-time conversations with their customers, and really, like I said, answer any questions they may have on the fly by simply pulling up a report and getting that real-time or that live data or that live information. And hopefully that will lead to that next big sale or that next big number of sales. So before I kind of jump into the content, I did just want to kind of set the stage by giving you guys a little bit of background of what mobile reporting was all about, and really one business example of how a company can leverage mobile reporting. Now, there's other obviously areas in the business that can benefit from mobile reporting. I just found the Salesforce example to be more relevant, especially from my background. So basically, SAP rolled out their first BI mobile package in XI 3.1 with Support Pack 2, and they continually have released product enhancements up until the current Support Pack on BO 4.1. And I can really attest to this. SAP has done a great job of continuously making the product better and better. I can't speak to 3.1 because I've never worked with mobile reports on that environment. But I did start at a very low support pack with 4.0. And I know when I first started out that you couldn't even use BICS connectivity to reach back to BW. You always had to use Universe. And also that the reports wouldn't even, or the prompts of the reports wouldn't be supported on a mobile device. Since then, SAP has obviously rectified those two issues, but made great strides in other areas as well as far as improvements in introducing new capabilities. So really the idea was to enable reporting on Android, BlackBerry, and iOS devices by providing a package or a mobile package which includes a mobile client, which is the actual application that you'll need to download, a mobile server, which really takes requests from the mobile client and communicates back to the BI platform, and then sends the request back on over to the client. And then obviously the third piece to this puzzle will be the BI platform itself, and all the informative and flashy reports that you guys as a company have developed and made available to your user base. So as I've mentioned, this presentation really split into two different parts. First, we're going to go over the fundamentals of mobile reporting. And the fundamentals are a little bit different from 4.0 to 4.1. I'm going to do my very best to toggle back and forth between the two environments. Please feel free to ask any questions specifically to the version that you're on at the end of the call. And then we're going to kind of go into the best practices or the tips and tricks that I've really kind of experienced in my days of mobile reporting. So let's go ahead and get started with the mobile client. So in 4.0, there are two mobile clients or two applications that are made available as free downloads through the App Store. The first one is SAP BO Explorer, and the second one is SAP BI. Now, in 4.1, what SAP has done is they've simply merged the BO Explorer app into the SAP BI app. So now you're only required to download one application that will have all the reporting or the supported reporting tools within the application. And that's kind of a good segue into the next portion of this slide is what are those supported reporting tools within 4.0 and 4.1 on these two different applications? So starting with 4.0, as you may have guessed, the SAP BO Explorer application supports both information spaces and view sets, whereas the BI application supports Crystal, Web Intelligence, analysis applications, which are Design Studio dashboards, and then the well-known Excelsius dashboards. In 4.1, like I mentioned before, what SAP has done is they simply have merged the Explorer app into the BI app. So you're going to have all the same reporting tools that I just mentioned supported in 4.1 with the addition of Lumira. Now, as you may notice, I do have an asterisk next to the supported tools in the bottom right-hand corner. I'm calling out the iPad. The supported tools that I just rattled off today are really specific to the iPad, and I wanted to give you guys an example using the iPad because out of all the devices, the iPad is the one that supports the most tools. And then if you want to kind of walk down the list, it would be iPad, iPhone, then you go into the Android devices, starting with the tablet and the Android phone. And then finally, the BlackBerry would be the one that supports the least amount of reporting tools. And in fact, the BlackBerry only supports Webi reports. So I think it's really important that as a company or as a team, you guys are well aware of kind of what devices are out in your company. And if you guys have a bring your own device policy, maybe a survey would be a good idea to kind of take a poll of what people are using out in the business. I know some organizations is more clean cut where they provide iPads or one device to their users and that's all they're going to use. But it is really important during the blueprinting phase or during the kind of even before that when you're just thinking it's a good investment to understand what devices are out there within your company so you can then tailor the implementation accordingly. So now that we've downloaded the mobile client or talked about the mobile client, let's talk about the next step would be to actually get these reports on the mobile device and have users actually report off of them. So in 4.0 and 4.1, it's the same workflow. But before I go there, I kind of want to focus on the screenshot that I have up on this slide. If you see, I have 3 categories listed with the mobile category highlighted. For most of the reporting tools, if you want them to appear on a mobile device, you will have to go into the Launchpad or go into CMC, right-click on the report, and then publish it to the mobile category. The exception here is Explore Information Spaces and View Sets, which are made available by default. So once again, if you want a report to show up out of the supported tools on a mobile device, you will always need to publish it to that mobile category. Now, you may ask, well, where does this mobile category and the other 2 categories come from? So basically, with the initial deployment of the mobile server to Tomcat, there will be configuration files which will have these 3 technical categories already predefined and already set up for you, ready to use. And as either as an administrator or as a report developer, all you will need to do is actually go into once again to the CMC or to the Launchpad and create these 3 categories. The only thing I do want to highlight is that you need to make sure that the name of the category directly matches to the name on the Tomcat or on the configuration file. And this is case sensitive, so if you create a category with a mobile with a lower M, it's not going to give you the same features that you're looking for. It's not going to publish your report to a mobile device until you have that names or those 2 names aligned from the configuration file to the actual categories. Now really quickly to kind of speak to the other 2 categories there. So in addition to the mobile category, we have a category called confidential. And you can publish a report to the confidential category if you have, let's say, sensitive information or sensitive data that you don't want people to either download or to work offline. So this is kind of a safety net or another layer of security. So you would start off always by publishing it to the mobile category. And if this was a report that was sensitive, you need to publish it to the confidential category as well. Now, the next category that's as part of the configuration file is the mobile design category. And I'll elaborate this a little bit later on in the presentation, but basically there's 2 different layouts that you can choose from within Web Intelligence. And if you wanted to go the route of the page layout, you would simply, once again, in addition to publishing your report to the mobile category, you'd also publish it to the mobile design category. Now, last note before we kind of proceed, these categories can be, you can change the name of the categories in the configuration file. You can add additional mobile categories. It's really up to you to how you want to customize it. But I do want to repeat this one more time that the name of the category on the Launchpad needs to exactly match what's on the configuration file. Okay, so now that we've downloaded the application and now that we've created those categories and published those insightful and very fancy and shiny reports to the iPad or to a mobile device, I want to kind of talk about the available features within the BI application itself. The first one I want to talk about today is the work offline capability. I'm going to give an example of, or let's say that you're at an airport and you're analyzing a report and you're about to board in. In this day and age, if you either don't want to pay for the Wi-Fi or if you don't trust the Wi-Fi on the plane to actually be able to render the data in a reasonable amount of time, you can follow a certain workflow that SB has laid out, and you can save the report to store it offline. And then once you get on the plane and when you're not connected to Wi-Fi, you can simply pull up the application and pull up the report where you last left off. And like I said, there is a certain workflow to use this work offline option. And there is 2 prerequisites that you have to meet to be able to use the work offline option, which I do want to touch on today. The first one would be that you need to make sure that you turn this on at the server, and I'll go a little bit, or I'll cover this in detail in a later slide. The second prerequisite is that for Webi intelligence reports, you need to make sure that you do not set the reports to refresh on open. So once again, they should not be set to refresh on open. So the next option that's now enabled in 4.1 on one of the SAP BI App versions is they now support the BI inbox. And this BI inbox is just the same as as everybody knows on the Launchpad. You as a user can send a report that you think is valuable over to one of your colleagues to analyze. So same workflow to actually make the report available on the iPad, which would be you would publish it to the mobile category. But if you want to utilize the BI inbox, there is some additional steps you need to take to ensure that mobile category is stable when you send it from one BI inbox to another. And my next little screenshot that I have on here is the mobile properties screenshot. And so once again, if you want to use the BI inbox, you will have to actually go to the report, right-click on it, click on mobile properties, and then take one of these options that apply to the report and apply to you. So, and these options are just the 3 categories that we just went over, kind of just spelled out differently. Display on mobile would equal the mobile category. So if you want this report just to display on mobile or hold that mobile category when you send it from one inbox to another, you would take the first option. Disable saving on mobile, this would equal the confidential category, and design for mobile, which would equal the mobile design category. So sorting reports, I know when I mention this, people might think, wow, it's a really basic feature, but I'm a big fan of change management, and this goes for any kind of business transformation, but in particularly with mobile reporting, because it's such a kind of 180 for a lot of companies who maybe are used to either push PDF reports or more static reports. I think everything that we can do on the, from an IT point of view or from a business SME point of view to make the transition easier on the business and make the adoption rate go up, we should take advantage of. So when I first was rolling out mobile reporting, I know a lot of users got overwhelmed with the iPad screen or the mobile device screen and said, there's so many reports on here, I just want to easily navigate to the one that I know or the one that I use. And one way to address that is to simply sort the reports either by report type. On the screen here, you see we have Crystal Web Intelligence split up. You can sort it by date, so when it is last updated, and also by author. And like I said, I think all these little things add up to a better acceptance rate and really a higher user adoption rate, right? And that's what really kind of implementation is all about. The next point is annotation. Just like you would in Paint, you can annotate the report. Let's say you find a line item that you have a question on. You can circle it or highlight it, and then you can send it off to a colleague. And actually, I haven't used this next feature firsthand, but I've heard about it, and I think it's pretty cool. And for that one, you can now attach a voice memo. So in addition to highlighting the line item, you can attach a nice voice memo to your colleague asking him or her your question about the line item. So QR code scan and barcode scan. Sticking with my kind of airplane or airport example, For those of you who get your mobile or get your boarding passes onto your mobile device, you notice when they board you on the plane, they'll scan the QR code scanner they have on there, and that's what actually gets you onto the airplane. Now, with SAP BI App, you have the same concept, but really it's used in two different ways. The first way is when you first install the application itself, you will need to fill out the connection parameters, just like you would for analysis for Microsoft Excel. These parameters can be simply sent off in this QR code scan, either by email or just by putting two devices together and scanning over the barcode. In addition, every report has its own QR code scan that, like I said, you can send that over to a user, and as long as they have access to it in the Launchpad, they can pull up the report. Now, the barcode does a similar task, but that's really speaking to filling in predefined prompt summaries, so values for those prompts, and also input controls as well. So some two cool features that I would say would be that are readily available to use as long as it fits your business requirements. So with the release of 4.1, Webi reports are now you're now able to save Webi reports as PDF or in a PDF format on the SAP BI application, and you are able to refresh that report as well. And when I first saw this out in the marketplace, I thought to myself, wow, it's kind of taking a step back. You know, we're trying to really, with mobile reporting, trying to get people away from these PDF files and get them onto something really dynamic, and you can slice and dice and filter and whatnot. But then I thought about it and said, you know, in regards to change management or transition management, if you have a set of users, and I've had this set of users before, who are so used to getting pushed out PDF reports to their email for the past 10, 15 years, it might be a better transition instead of taking them from 0 to 100 and doing that complete 180, maybe to kind of take a more 90-degree approach and get them on the mobile device, let's call it an iPad, so they get familiar with actually logging into their mobile device and opening the application and understand that workflow and get familiar with the user interface. But you'll still have the report in a PDF format, so it's not completely or totally new to them. They're still at least used to how the report looks and feels. And maybe 3 or 6 months down the line, when you feel that business adoption is up at a good level, you can then kind of switch it over to the actual report, how it shows on the desktop. So thumbnail images, the image or the screenshot that just popped up on the side is exactly what a Webi report would look like on the iPad. As you can see, it's very basic. It's just white, and it has the red Webi color. And once again, this is depending on you as a business or as your business partners. If you wanted to spruce things up a little bit on the iPad, you do have the option of actually embedding your own JPEG image into this thumbnail space. And you would do that by simply copying and pasting the JPEG URL to the keyword box through the properties of a report. So you would go into the Launchpad to the CMC. Once again, you would right-click on the report, and then you would paste, or then you would click on the properties option, and then you would paste that URL into the keyword box. And then after you've done that, you can now have a customized thumbnail image, just like the one that I just pulled up on my slide. So the last bullet that I want to kind of go over before I move on to the next topic is that you should always check what BI app version that you're on and what the supported features are. During this presentation, I've kind of, like I said, toggled back and forth between 4.1 and 4.0 and some features that are available in the one BI app version, but maybe not in a previous BI app version. So it's always good to understand exactly what it is that your application can do. I would recommend always being on the latest version, but that's really up to the company as a team. But like I said, it's good to know exactly what the features are that you have available to you at your fingertips, and also kind of what's on the horizon in the new releases or on a later release of the BI application. Okay, so now we've kind of walked through the whole kind of workflow of, okay, we have the mobile server, we've kind of talked about the client, we've downloaded it, we've published reports to the mobile application, and we've went in there and kind of played around with it. Let's kind of talk about kind of what customizations are out there in regards to the client properties. Now, if everybody could just please look at the bottom right-hand corner of the slide in the image that I have right under SAP BO 4.1. If you see, there's really 4 options that we can customize here. The first one, and I'm actually going to take you guys through each one by one. The first one is a save password option. So just like you need a password to log into the BI Launchpad, you need that same password and user ID to actually run reports on the application. However, within the client settings, you can change that value to true, and then a user, when they first actually install the application, they can type in their username and their password, and they can save the ID and password. So every time after they're actually in the application, they don't need to always have to log in. And I think that really goes a long way, once again, going back to change management. The more seamless we can make it from an IT point of view or from an IT standpoint, we should. So that's one of the common settings that are available to any company that implements mobile reporting with SAP. The next option is the offline storage option that I had talked about in the previous slide. So this is where the setting would be, and you want to flip that value to true. And the following setting after that is really talking about the shelf life of reports that you actually publish to this offline storage mode. So by default, it's set to a year, but you can either increase that or decrease that based on the business requirement. And the last one, and this is probably the one that I find most important, or at least right up there with the save password option, is the ability to completely turn off the application password. So in addition to your SAP ID and password, the SAP BI application itself has its own password. So you can imagine how many passwords employees already have to maintain. And now we're kind of throwing another password in the mix, which would be the application password. And firsthand, I've seen a lot of people get frustrated with this password. It's probably one of the last passwords that they want to remember. And maybe for people who don't frequently log into the iPad and run reports, they might not know off the top of their head. And if they start off and they can't even get into the application itself, and they have to actually uninstall it and then reinstall it and then enter in the connection parameters again to actually log in, you're going to be dealing with a bunch of frustrated individuals, and it's not going to bode well for the mobile reporting, I think, implementation as a whole. So I would always recommend that you would make sure that you would disable that mobile application password, so the user can simply open the application at any given time. And then if you couple that with turning on the save password option, it will be a seamless kind of single sign-on using the mobile device. Now as far as where you can make these changes or these customizations at, so in 4.0, you have to actually go into the configuration files on the Tomcat. And if you see on the left-hand side or the bottom left-hand side of my screen, I have a direct screenshot of what the configuration files would look like. And then in 4.1, SAP has made life as an admin a little bit more easier. And they have put these settings underneath the applications portion of the CMC. And if you simply right-click on the mobile reporting application, you can find these client settings there, and then you can make any customizations that you see fit. So those, like I said, are some of the client properties that you can customize, or the client properties that you can customize that I wanted to talk about. Okay, so we've kind of laid the foundation on mobile reporting, and now I really want to take it to the next segment of this presentation, which is really going to hone in on tips and tricks for Webi report development on the iPad. For all the report developers I have on the call today, and if you've already worked with mobile reporting, you will know that really Webi report development on the iPad really encompasses its own best practices. It's a little bit different of a beast than just developing reports on desktop. There are some more thought that you need to put into it, and some, like I said, some tips and tricks that you should know to make your report actually be readable and legible on the iPad. So before I really go into some of these best practices, I just want to make sure that everyone is clear on kind of the two layouts that you have available to you that you can publish a Webi report to on the iPad. So the first layout, and this is the default layout, if you simply just publish the report to the mobile category, it will always be in the card layout. And the card layout, if you kind of can envision your Web Intelligence report on the desktop, basically what it's saying is that they split the report up into 4 different quadrants. So you have a vertical line and a horizontal line right in the middle. And the idea here is that if you had a report that had 3 to 4 report elements, let's say you had a table, a pie chart, and maybe a bar chart, you can place those elements in one of the 4 different quadrants. And then on the iPad, where we can't always guarantee what the report is going to translate to on the iPad, it's at least going to hold that format, and those 3 report elements will always show on one page. Now, there's a few caveats to the card layout, such as if you, sticking with the example of 3 report elements, if you have 3 report elements and you don't spread them out into the quadrants and you put them all on one vertical line, they're going to move the last report element over to the next page of the iPad. So then you're going to have a report that shows 2/3 of the picture on one page, and then you have to flip the pages to show the really complete picture of the report, which is not always best practice or not always user-friendly. The other caveat is that if you have a report with sections, the card layout would not be the right layout for you. It just doesn't work well at all. And you might find that out due to trial and error. I know I certainly did. From my point of view, and what I've talked to other colleagues about as well, is that the real advantage to card layout is that this will mitigate, or this could help mitigate, the maintenance and the maintenance required in actually maintaining 2 different reports. One report developed strictly for a mobile device, and one report developed strictly for the desktop. The card layout does give you that capability to try to at least have one version of the report. And yes, I can attest to this. In my time with mobile reporting, we almost always have 2 different versions. One would be a version for the iPad, one would be a different version of the report for the desktop. And it's really about how it's all formatted in and how it kind of renders on both different machines. Now, the other layout option is what we call the page layout. And to enable the page layout, you would need to, in addition to publishing your report to the mobile category, you'd also need to publish it to that mobile design category that we talked about a little bit earlier on the presentation. And basically, as you might have guessed, the page layout, what it's saying is that all the report elements that start or that reside on the very first page of your Web Intelligence report, they're going to fit everything onto one page on the iPad. So if you have a table that spans over 20 pages, it's going to fit that table on one page of the iPad. However, you have to either scroll up and down or left to right to see all the information in that table. So those are the 2 layouts that you have available for you to use. Personally, I always have gone the page layout route. Like I said, the card layout route is a little bit specific to a business requirement and a business need. I just usually have worked with reports that have sections and that are a little more involved than just 3 different report elements. So now kind of going into the more of the best practices for Webi report development. So the way the iPad kind of reads a Webi report when it first renders on the machine or on the iPad, it will start from the very top left-hand corner of the Webi report, and then it will read all the way down to the bottom right-hand corner. So what you're going to want to do to make sure that you're not only maximizing all the real estate that you can, but also ensure that there's no blank spots or white spots in your top left-hand corner of your report on the iPad, is you want to make sure that you place your first report elements or all of your reports elements at the very top left-hand corner of the Webi report document, and you can do this by using position controls. Like I said, this way you're ensuring that you're maximizing all the real estate that's available to you. And kind of, and related to that, the last point that I just mentioned, that if you wanted to, you could always, if you wanted to gauge kind of what the size of, or what the report would look like on the iPad, you can simply take an image background, and you can set it to be the same size as the iPad screen. And then if you put it into your report and send it to the back of the report, you can continue on with your development, and you can get a kind of a better understanding of what the real estate you will be working with versus what you're working with your desktop or laptop. So page headers and footers, I know I'm a big fan of those when it comes down to the desktop or laptop. And it's funny, I keep on saying desktop, but I probably should only reference laptops because I'm not too sure how many people are still on desktops these days. But like I said, headers and footers on the laptop are nice because you can stick the title in the header, and in the footer you can stick the page number and other information. When it translates over to the iPad, it actually eats up a lot of real estate, and it really minimizes the screen or the real estate that you have left to actually show the report in. Also, my experience with the headers and footers is that they just don't, like I said, translate or correlate well over to the iPad, and it will kind of throw off the whole format of the report. In addition to that, by default on the iPad, whatever report title that you give in the actual Webi report tab will always be brought up to the very top of the iPad screen. So that will take place of the need for having a report title. But also, if you have that in there right below a header, it just wouldn't really make sense. So my advice is to always get rid of the page header and footer right off the bat. Next one is stay clear of wrapping text. And this is something that I learned the hard way. And they may have fixed this in 4.1, but in 4.0, what my experience was that we want the route page layout. So once again, we had one table that we fit in all one iPad screen. But we didn't want our users to scroll left or back and forth to see all the information in the report. So we thought, well, why don't we just wrap text, and we'll be able to fit it on one screen. Well, when we did that, when we wrapped text and we went to go test on the iPad, we noticed that the report had shrunk down to a third of its size, and really all you were looking at was 2 rows and about 3 columns, and then you have to kind of scroll up and down or left to right to see the additional 20 rows or the additional 10 columns or whatever have you. So for whatever reason, wrapping text does not correlate well on the iPad, and if you ever come across that little shrunken report table screen on the iPad, I would always go and check the wrapping text option and make sure that that is actually turned off. So just a quick point on sections. You're going to want to make sure that you're aware of the sections and the placement of the sections on the laptop version of the report. For example, let's say you have a report that has 2 different sections, and in the laptop they're right on top of each other. When you open the mobile device, for some odd reason, they might show up on a vertical line right next to each other, or the child section might show a little bit above the parent section and still on that awkward vertical line. So it really comes down to a trial and error. You listen to make sure that you kind of place these in the appropriate spot on the report. Also, you're going to want to make sure that you put the sections not in the body of the table, but within the table area of the report. So when you actually go from one page to the next on the iPad, it will hold the section values as well. And you won't lose what section you're looking at from one page to the next. So the next few points are kind of similar, and they're really talking about how to avoid extra performance hits when the report actually renders on an iPad. So limit font sizes to 9, 12, and 15. Basically what it's saying is that SAP has recommended that 9 would be for small text, 12 would be for medium text, and 15 would be for large text. And to not try to throw in a 32 or 48 font size, because A, that the iPad is not going to show it in that size font, but B, it's also going to have to go through extra work to kind of revert it from the 32 font size down to maybe a 15 font size. And the same applies for my next point regarding bold text or numbers. The iPad's not going to show the number or the text as bold. In fact, it's going to have a negative effect where, once again, it's going to have to work a little bit harder to revert that bold into just the normal text. And then, wherever possible, you're going to want to try to shorten the data display formats in the header titles and tab titles. And once again, this is kind of speaking to the point of just trying to make sure everything fits on one page and cleanly and neatly as per the requirement or as per how the business wants it. And the last point that I want to talk about when we are in regards to Webi report development, if you really want to ensure a successful implementation, I would highly recommend that you avoid these monster Webi reports. The iPad or any other mobile device, for that matter, they're not meant to have these kind of data dump reports where you're looking at large data sets at a very granular level. It's really to report kind of at an aggregated level, but if you do need to go down to a more granular level, you don't want to make sure that you develop the report appropriately and have maybe prompts in there that only limit end users to see one line item at a time or 2 line items at a time. Otherwise, you just won't get mobile reporting off the ground if you're always kind of trying to go with data dumps on the iPad. So that's kind of a good segue into the next slide here, and that's really talking about performance with Webi reports on the iPad. As you probably could have got from the last slide, is that with the introduction of the iPad and the mobile server, we really have another layer that the report has to go through to actually render on the iPad. And it's going to take a little bit longer than it would take on an actual laptop. So I want to go through kind of some best practices or tips and tricks that I've kind of that I found that were beneficial that I want to share with you guys. The first set of improvements are really on the server side, and in fact, all these points really they're related to mobile reporting, but they're also can be used for just plain old laptop or plain old desktop reporting. And the first one is speaking to splitting out the adaptive processing server. So for all the basis people on the line today, or for all the BobJ admins, you know the APS is one server that contains about 21 different services within that server. And let's say your company only chooses to use 10 of the services because that's what applies to your environment. And within those 10, you have a few that apply to web intelligence. Maybe one is a DSL bridge, and one is the visual service. And let's say that your environment really reports heavily off web intelligence, and you want to allocate more memory or more Java heap to those two services. To do that, you need to actually split the APS out and put those two services on their own as their own kind of server. And then you can go into the command line to the properties and, like I said, kind of allocate more memory to those two services. Another kind of hidden benefit of splitting out the APS is that you can definitely isolate some workflows, and you can kind of mitigate some downtime. Let's say if you just needed the visual service to be restarted, you can restart that portion of the APS without having an impact the additional services that the APS possesses. Also, it would actually help you with troubleshooting because you can quickly see if one service is down instead of just looking at the whole APS and saying, oh, well, there's 21 services within that. Which one's actually the root cause, or which one's causing the problem? The next point that I want to go over is actually ensuring that you properly size your web intelligence processing server and the APS based on number of users. If you have 1,000 users, let's say, for example, you're probably going to want to look at maybe creating a cluster with multiple nodes that has a web intelligence processing server and an APS in each one of those nodes, instead of just having one node that has one APS and one Webi intelligence processing server. So kind of jumping around now, going down to the report level performance opportunities, I have it up here again. Please do avoid those monster Webi reports, and also avoid utilizing multiple different data sources. I think there's a misconception out there that if you have, let's say, 4 data sources within one Webi report, that they all kick off in parallel, where in fact they kick off one by one. So the first one will kick off, it will grab the data from that query and bring it back to the report. Then the second one kicks off and it does the same process, then the third and the fourth. And that really adds a significant amount of time at runtime, or at least a little bit to make it noticeable. And once again, this is kind of redundant, but just report and aggregated data as much as possible if you can, to ensure that the users have the best experience, but also ensuring that they have the insightful or the informative information that they need. So avoid autofit. So for people who don't know what autofit is, it's basically a setting that you can turn on at the table level within a web intelligence document, which basically calls out, or which basically says that, okay, regardless of what the value is, if it's 1,000 or if it's 1,000,000, the cells in this table are going to expand or shrink accordingly or appropriately, and it's going to exactly fit what the data display is. Now, while I'm actually a big fan of this on the laptop, when it comes down to the iPad, and let's say you have an iPad report that's 20 pages and you're on page 20 and you want to go back to page 1, if you jump from page 20 to page 1, it's going to have to calculate all those auto-fits on the fly from 19, 18, 17, and so forth to get to page 1. So it's actually kind of hindering your performance in that particular situation. So now kind of moving on to the semantic layer performance opportunities that are out there. Once again, this doesn't only apply to mobile reporting. This will apply to kind of any SAP business objects reporting that you're doing. But I would always recommend or always suggest to build lean queries as much as possible. So really only have the objects or the dimensions and key figures in the query that are actually going to be used in the report. If you can, if your business or if your IT organization is okay with picking up the maintenance of that. If they're not okay with that, then and you have to have these queries that have maybe 10 objects that aren't used in one report but are used in a different report, you want to make sure that you have query stripping enabled and turned on, and also that you put as many objects as you can as free characteristics. That way it's kind of, once again, rectifying the runtime of all those objects. Also, you're going to want to make sure that you push as many calculations and filters that you have in the Web Intelligence report back to the query level or back to the back end. Once again, this is just going to make the report runtime that much faster. And the last kind of tip and trick that I have for you guys is regarding to the array fetch size, which is for both UNX and UNV universes. And basically what the array fetch size is it's a limit that's set at the universe, which is going to kind of call out how many times it wants to go back to the database and how many rows it's going to return. So for example, if you have a report that's going to return 5,000 rows and the array fetch size is set to 100, it's going to take the universe 50 different times to go back and reach all the data and grab all the data and actually have it render on your machine. If you increase that limit to 200, it's only going to take the universe 25 times to reach back and grab the data and have it render on your machine. But do be careful. You don't want to blow the limit up too much because you don't want your universe to try to bring over more data than it actually can. That would be that adverse effect, right? So I know we are getting short on time here, but we're done with a good portion of the presentation, but we're really at my favorite part of the presentation, and this is really the best practices at a holistic point of view, just about implementing mobile reporting as a whole, right? And like I said, this really has stemmed from first-hand industry experience from what I've seen worked in my industry. So kind of like I alluded to ensure that you have a successful implementation, both from a business and IT standpoint, you need to make sure that you keep a few things in mind that I want to go over with you today. The first is to make sure that you're setting expectations and you're marketing mobile reporting appropriately. What you don't want to have happen is that you don't want to hype up mobile reporting so much that people think it's going to be the savior and it's going to have the flashy reports and it's going to do A, B, and C right off the bat, and then you actually go live and you kind of uncover all these roadblocks that you didn't think about, or you have performance issues or whatnot, and then your user base is just, they turn into non-believers and they have no faith in mobile reporting from that point on, and it's really a challenge to try to get them back on the mobile reporting. Unfortunately, I can't tell you that from first-hand experience. It does take a lot of TLC and a lot of hand-holding to get them back on mobile reports after that hype has after the hype has been let down. So just make sure that you market it appropriately and you'll be fine. The next point is regarding performance. Like I said, there will be performance impact, but I would recommend that you go out and meet with a business SME or a business counterpart, whoever can speak for your end user community, and they can provide you with a performance benchmark of how long the business can take a report to refresh. That's not only good to establish, but then when it comes to testing, you can actually kind of work or have a benchmark to work towards, right? And then when you do get into the testing cycle, and you're not only testing the data and how the report's formatted, I would always recommend that you do throw in a little test script that's for performance, and then make sure that you're testing outside of the office. When you're at the office, you usually have really good Wi-Fi and you're connected to the company's Wi-Fi. It might be a good idea to go down to a local Starbucks or to another public place and try to actually run the reports on Wi-Fi and also on LTE, just to make sure that for the reps or for employees that are out in the field, that performance is actually going to be sufficient. So, and here it is again. Like I said, I just can't stress this point enough. Just ensure that mobile reporting is utilized as intended. Make sure you, like I said, it's not a data dump tool. I wouldn't utilize it in that way. So scheduling reports is okay for the iPad. Let's say that you just went live with mobile reporting and performance might be almost there, but it's not quite acceptable for the business. I think a good approach would be to let the business know that, okay, well, we're only going to make this report available on the iPad or on a mobile device, but we're going to schedule it, therefore you won't have to deal with that performance. But that kind of gets them, like I said, it gets them on the iPad, and they get used to the workflow of logging into the iPad and viewing the report, and gets used to the application and just the, like I said, the motions of it. And then when the performance issue is kind of rectified, you can then kind of pull back the scheduling and let the reports or let the on-demand floodgates open up, and users can then refresh the reports, and it won't be a complete shift from PDF emails to mobile reporting on-demand reports. Establish in-house expertise for whatever you're implementing, especially with mobile reporting, because it might be so new to your company. I always think it's smart to have whoever the business SME out there is, or whoever really has a good rapport with the business user base, to get them up in speed and really have them be the knowledge experts in mobile reporting. That way, the business has a good funnel or a good person to turn to, not only for help. This person can act kind of as a liaison and as a mobile reporting champion, and can give the end users a TLC that they need when they need it. And like I said, also have a familiar name, face, and voice for the end user community to kind of reach out to during this really kind of a big transition for the user community, right? I mentioned some of the BI app features and how they kind of play in with business adoption. And just want to repeat myself, that you should always make sure that you're taking advantage of all those options, or all the ones that you see or deem fit or that apply to your environment. One option that I do want to point out that I didn't mention before is that, like I said, when you download the application itself, you have to either manually input the connection parameters. However, what I found that worked best is right at Go Live is you can actually email the connection parameters out to your user base. And on the bottom left-hand corner, I have a screenshot of what the email would look like. And at the very bottom is kind of truncated. You'll see the QR code scan, which you can use. Or you can simply just double tap on the hyperlink there. And if you're on your iPad, and it will actually open up the connection parameters and will fill everything in for you by default. So just like the QR code scan is another way of going about it. If the QR code scan maybe is too much for people that aren't tech savvy, this is really a simplified approach to getting the connections up and running. And then I also have disabling the password, which we've already talked about. There's two really good things that I think will go a long way when it comes down to business adoption and change management. So make sure that you provide proper documentation, not only in regards to end-user instructions, but also over to the production support team. You want to make sure not only that the users know exactly what they're going to do, and I always err on the side of providing really detailed instructions versus providing kind of wishy-washy instructions and letting the user having to struggle and figure it out on their own. It's always best to be more thorough than not. But also, it's always good for the project team to transfer the knowledge over right away to their production support team. So when users call in and when there are issues, the right people are actually on the call who can address them swiftly. So tackle complexities appropriately. When issues come up, I see people kind of freeze up and say, well, I'm not sure what route to go to because the mobile server is new, we have this mobile device, it could be anything. But I just kind of want to level set the playing field here and just say this, remember the basics. I want to get too caught up in introducing all these the server, the new mobile device. I think if you kind of go through the motions of first, see if it's a data issue, is it a formula within Webi, is it a formula within the query that's kind of giving us an error message, or is it a error message that's pointing to the server and then you go back to the CMC and see what's going on there, or whatever issue it is. If you just kind of remember the basic steps, I think you'll be fine when it comes down to troubleshooting and defect resolution. The last point that I want to touch on here, and like I said, I know we're getting kind of short on time, is that, and in fact, this is actually my favorite point of the whole presentation, and that's why I have it in red, is that you should always listen and cater to the business. Ensure what is being delivered is truly the business ask. I know you can have IT organizations or other project team members, even on the business side, that say, hey, mobile reporting is really the way of the future, and this is flashy, and this is exciting, and this is what our company needs. But then when you go to roll it out at Go Live, maybe your organization says, you know, this is cool, but it's really not practical for what we do on a day-to-day basis. So you don't want to get carried away with yourself. You always want to make sure that what the project team is doing is in line with what the actual business ask is. And with that said, the next kind of 2 points is just really talking about developing and executing a strategic soup to nuts development lifecycle. So you kind of have that seamless life cycle, and then you can get reports out quickly, and your defect resolution process is leaned out. Like I said, from my past experience, when you have to fix defects in dev, which is a normal process, and get it up to prod, if you have a poor transport process, or if any kind of gaps in testing or whatnot, or any phase of that process, and it's going to hinder the turnaround time for users to get the report, they're not going to be too happy with that. So it's always important, and then once again, this is really for mobile reporting or just normal laptop reporting, to have kind of a strategic and a streamlined soup to nut development life cycle. So with all that said, after I've talked to you guys ear off for a little over an hour, you're now at our Q&A portion of the webinar. And I have been paying attention to the chat window, and I did notice a few questions that actually came through. I think since we're already a little bit over time, we'll just maybe get to 1 or 2 of them today. So the first one from one of our members of the audience is, basically they're asking for the mobile categories, the mobile mobile designed and confidential, why don't they actually show up on the iPad? And just to give people a little bit of background who haven't opened an iPad and haven't opened an application, on the left-hand side, you'll see a few options like the BI inbox. You see your favorites, just like you would in the Launchpad. And there is a portion where you see categories. However, since these mobile categories exist in the configuration file, they're deemed as technical categories and they won't show up on the iPad. So if you wanted to have a category that did show up on the iPad, the further group reports, you have to directly create that in the Launchpad. So I hope that answers the question. Okay, so like I said, I think we have time for one more. And we have a question out there if, and it's specific to the Android, if the Android devices support Explorer reports. And the answer is no. Android devices, neither the tablet or the Android phone supports Explorer. And actually, I'm kind of glad that question was brought up because in my handy appendix section, I actually have the actual full product matrix of what I spoke about in the very beginning of the presentation. And like I said, this PowerPoint will be sent out to everybody, and the link will be made available on the company's website, BICP's website. But you can see that Explorer is only supported on the iOS devices. So once again, it's really important to know exactly what devices are out in your company before you actually embark on implementing mobile reports, so you're fully aware of what to develop and which direction to go to. So with that said, the webinar is now over. I want to thank everybody again for kind of carving out some time out of your day to kind of hop on this call and hopefully learn a little bit more about mobile reporting, and hopefully got some of your questions to answer for you. Like I said, if there are additional questions, I know we didn't get to a few of them that we couldn't answer because we're out of time, but please feel free to contact John Bassick directly, or if it's more around content about the webinar itself, feel free to go ahead and contact me directly. Once again, my name is Adam Horn. I'm one of the consultants here at BICP, and my email is ahorn, H-O-R-N, at bicp.com. And either John and I will be able to answer your questions. So like I said, thank you again. I hope you guys aren't sick of my voice, and I hope to see you guys on another BICP webinar in the near future. All right, take care.